Now, Austin Flint Murmur. जरा दिल लगा के आंसर करो इस क्वेश्चन का. ऑस्टिन फ्लिंट मर्मर. What is a true statement about Austin Flint Murmur? चलो मैं आपको गिव मी द बोर्ड. ऑस्टिन फ्लिंट मर्मर के बारे में महाज्ञानी बना दूंगा. राइट? एवरी संडे 4-5 क्रिटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट्स को आप महाज्ञानी बन जाना. व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ महाज्ञानी? नन ऑफ अवर क्लासमेट्स हैव ज्ञान, वो सब अज्ञान में है, खाली हमको मालूम है, वो होता है महाज्ञानी. राइट? सो एटलीस्ट 300 क्वेश्चंस में 50-60 क्वेश्चन में आप महाज्ञानी होना. महाज्ञानी मीन्स इफ एवरीबडी नोज दैट इट इज नॉट कॉल्ड महाज्ञानी. सब लोग अज्ञान की अंधकार में रहना, खाली आप ज्ञान की रोशनी में रहना, उसको बोलते हैं महाज्ञानी कॉन्सेप्ट्स. ऑस्टिन फ्लिंट इज लाइक दैट. valvular heart disease. So you have what is called aortic regurgitation. लेफ्ट एट्रियम, लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, यहां रहता है mitral valve. This is aorta, and here what you have is a aortic valve. Aortic valve. So, when aortic regurgitation is happening, when will aortic regurgitation happen? Let us see. Whenever the blood enters from left atrium into ventricle. Ventricle क्या हो गया? Ventricle, what happened to the ventricle when left atrium is filling into ventricle? What is that called as? What is that phase called? Diastole. So end of the diastole क्या हो गया इसको? This has become fully pregnant with blood, left ventricle. Then after the diastole is over, what is ventricle doing? It is undergoing contraction and pushing the blood into the aorta. Right? Into the aorta. So while it is pushing the blood into the aorta, what is happening to the size of the ventricle? It is becoming smaller. So end of the ventricular systole, when all the blood is pushed into the aorta, what is ventricle after the end of the systole? What will it do? It will undergo once more diastole. So when it is undergoing diastole, before the diastole begins, what happens? Aortic valve closes. After the ventricular systole is over, all blood is pushed into aorta, aortic valve closes and ventricles start relaxing and diastole begins. That is the time what is happening when the diastole begins, the mitral valve opens and left atrial blood is running into the ventricle. That time, aortic regurgitation occurs. When will aortic regurgitation occur, doctor? Aortic regurgitation occurs during ventricular diastole or systole? फटाफट बोलो. वेंट्रिकल जब सिस्टोली में जा रहे तब होता या वेंट्रिकल डायस्टोली में जा रहे? Is it the time when the regurgitation occurring? When the ventricle is undergoing diastole, start होने के टाइम पे, when ventricle is getting filled from the left atrium into ventricle with the opening of the mitral valve and the blood is entering into the ventricle, that time all the blood that the ventricle pushed into the aorta during systole, right, that is regurgitating back into ventricle. So aortic regurgitation is a diastolic event when the ventricle is getting filled. From where is ventricle getting filled? From the left atrium, it is filling into the left ventricle. समझ में आ गया ना? First thing, aortic regurgitation, first you should know, is a diastolic event or systolic event. फटाफट बोलो. It is a diastolic event. What is the meaning of diastolic event? Ventricle is getting filled. Diastole occurred after systole. After systole. Systole, when the ventricle is contracting, pushing the blood into the aorta. Systole खत्म होने के बाद, खत्म हो जाना, खत्म होने के बाद aortic valve closes, and the ventricle enters into diastole, ventricular diastole begins, and ventricle is getting filled from left atrium, and that point of time the blood is regurgitating. Then the aortic regurgitation is happening. ये समझ में आ गया ना? मेंटल पिक्चर आ गया ना? हाँ. Now, aortic regurgitation की वजह से ventricle during diastole is getting filled from two sources. What are they? एक left atrium is filling into it. Same time, left ventricle, aorta also is filling into the ventricle. So, गंगा इस तरफ से आ रही, नर्मदा इस तरह से आ रहे, गंगा और नर्मदा मिल गए तो क्या हो जाएगा? Turbulence. That lead to when two rivers, two streams come and hit each other. ऊपर से ये बारिश गिर रहा है और इधर से aortic regurgitant आ रहा है, दोनों clash हो जाएगा और turbulence हो जाएगा, and that turbulence will create a murmur, and that murmur, because of the turbulence, because of the clash between the blood coming from left atrium into left ventricle and the regurgitant blood coming from the aorta into left ventricle, दोनों clash होने के वजह से जो मरमर होता है, उस मरमर को कहते हैं ऑस्टिन-फ्लिंट मरमर. अब बताओ, ऑस्टिन-फ्लिंट is diastolic murmur or systolic murmur? It is a diastolic murmur, is what you need to remember. And where does it happen? It happens due to aortic regurgitation. Now, first statement you should learn. If aortic regurgitation can be mild, aortic regurgitation can be moderate, aortic regurgitation can be severe. Which type of aortic regurgitation में एक गंगा जो बह रही जब नर्मदा से मिल रही, that lead to development of turbulence. In which situation does it lead to turbulence? Only if it is moderate and severe. In fact, if it is severe, lot of blood is flowing from the aorta into the ventricle, and that lot of the blood can lead to development of the turbulence. So, presence of the Austin-Flint is an indication that the aortic regurgitation is not mild, it is moderate, or aortic regurgitation is severe. It is indicated by the presence of Austin-Flint murmur. अभी बताओ, Austin-Flint is a diastolic murmur. फटाफट बोलो बेटे, Austin-Flint. All of you repeat. Austin-Flint क्या होता है? Loud बोलो, आवाज loud बोलो. Austin-Flint होता है aortic regurgitation, diastolic murmur. यही बात आपके मन में बैठना, ठीक है? So, S1, S2, lub, dub, S1, lub, once more is happening. So, lub, dub, lub, lub, dub, lub, lub, dub, lub. अच्छा भाई, lub क्या होता है? Mitral valve closure. Mitral valve closure. Dub क्या होता है? Aortic valve closure. Aortic valve closure. Aortic valve close होने के बाद ventricle will undergo filling. So, between S2 and S1 it is called diastole. Diastole कब होता है बोलो? Aortic valve closure के बाद ventricle जरा relax होके atrium से blood receive करता है. That's the reason the aortic valve closure is identified by S2. S2 के बाद जो होता है diastole होता है. Then S1 occur because of the mitral valve closure. Once more, get back the picture. Mitral valve बंद हो गया, close हो गया, close होके ventricle कब close होता है? After all the blood in the atrium goes into ventricle, ventricle is fully filled, then the mitral valve closes. Then what will happen? Aortic valve opens. and the blood will go into the aorta. So mitral valve close होने के बाद होने वाला event क्या होता है? Ventricle undergoes contraction and pushes the blood into aorta. So that is the reason after S1, when the mitral valve closes, aortic valve opens and the blood goes into the aorta. Between S1 and S2 it is called systole. Between S2 and S1 it is called diastole, is what you need to remember. So Austin Flint kahan rahe? Austin Flint is a diastolic murmur. Diastolic murmur is what you have to basically remember. Right? When aortic regurgitation is happening, when the ventricle is getting filled, the turbulence is responsible for the diastolic murmur called Austin Flint in aortic regurgitation. Tell me, what are all the diastolic murmurs that you know? For example, if there is a mitral stenosis, doctor, mitral stenosis. If there is a tight mitral valve, right, narrow mitral valve, when the diastole begins, what happens? When this tight valve opens, it will produce an opening snap. So opening snap is what? Basically a diastolic event. That means it happens after S2. Then, when there is a mitral valve which is narrow, mitral stenosis mein, the left atrial blood is entering into the ventricle, left ventricle through a narrow valve. इसलिए mitral stenosis produces mid-diastolic murmur. So, किस बात का confusion आएगा अभी? Austin Flint is also mid-diastolic. Because diastole only, no, during diastole only Austin Flint is happening. When the aortic regurgitation and this mitral flow are hitting each other. And even if mitral stenosis hai to bhi, the murmur is mid-diastolic murmur. So, dono mid-diastolic murmur hai. दो mid-diastolic murmurs confused with each other. So, what is the differential diagnosis? How do you differentiate Austin Flint with the mid-diastolic murmur of mitral stenosis is the examiner's question. Now, first difference क्या होता है? फटाफट बोलो. Opening snap किस में रहता है मेरे भाई? Opening snap होता है mitral stenosis में, but not in aortic regurgitation. Austin Flint is because of what? Aortic regurgitation. And mitral stenosis ka mid-diastolic murmur is due to mitral stenosis. We are differentiating the two. Second important point. Typically, if aortic regurgitation is very severe, then you are listening Austin Flint. When aortic regurgitation is severe, lot of blood is coming back into ventricle and regular blood is coming from the atrium. Ventricle के ऊपर काम बढ़ जाएगा. So what will happen? Left ventricle fails. How do you recognize it on auscultation? Left ventricular failure. Left ventricular failure is indicated by third heart sound, S3. S3 is an indicator of left ventricular failure. Why S3 happens in left ventricular failure? S3 means it happens after S2. After S2, what is the event happening? Diastole. That means atrial blood is falling into the ventricle. So if the left ventricle fails, then it can't pump all its blood into aorta. So a lot of blood remains in the ventricle. And when the left ventricular failure is there is some amount of blood pulled up inside the ventricle, right? Then when the diastole begins, all this blood is jumping into the pool of that stagnant blood, and that produces a splash which is called third heart sound. Third heart sound कब होता है? When left ventricle fails. Third heart sound कब सुनता है? जब diastole है. During the diastole you listen the S3. So left ventricular failure किस में होता है? Aortic regurgitation में. So S3, presence of S3 indicates this mid-diastolic murmur किसके वजह से हो रहा? Aortic regurgitation के वजह से हो रहा. So, presence of S3 is a clue that this MDM is Austin Flint and it belongs to aortic regurgitation. Then what happens in mitral stenosis to the left ventricle? Mitral stenosis को में left ventricle कभी fail होता क्या? कभी fail होता क्या? फटाफट बोलो. Left ventricle, does it fail in mitral stenosis is the important question. Mitral stenosis is a narrow mitral valve. Already like a benign prostatic enlargement guy with a poor urinary stream, the left atrium is pissing into the ventricle very little blood. Already कुछ भी काम नहीं है ventricle को. Why will it fail? It does not fail. You will never hear S3, never hear S3 in mitral stenosis. That's the important principle. Lot of times examiner asks, MS may what do you listen? You listen S1, you listen S2, but never S3. Because left ventricle never fails. Because it has no work. If it is a purely mitral stenosis, is what you need to remember. So, absence of the S3 is an indication it is a pure MS. Presence of an S3 indicates it's an aortic regurgitation is what you need to remember. Then, if it is a mitral stenosis, how will be the S1 first heart sound? First heart sound is loud unless the mitral valve is degenerated. So, or calcified. So, mitral stenosis may you listen loud S1. So, if a mid-diastolic rumble is associated with any opening snap or a loud S1, that mid-diastolic murmur is most likely be due to mitral stenosis is what you need to basically remember. Now, you don't hear a loud S1 if it is aortic regurgitation. Then one more important principle is there. If you take the mid-diastolic murmur due to mitral stenosis, why does mid-diastolic murmur occur in mitral stenosis? When mitral valve is narrow, left atrial blood is passing through this narrow wall into the left ventricle, it produces that rumbling sound hota hai. Lub dub brrr, lub dub, lub is S1, lub dub is S2, S2 के बाद होने वाला चीज क्या होता है? Diastole, and during that diastole, lub dub brrr is that MDM of mitral stenosis. But when the left atrium is spilling into left ventricle during the diastole, last 1/3 of the diastole may, what does atrium does? Atrium contracts. First 2/3 में atrium doesn't contract. Last 1/3 में atrium contracts. Just like somebody passing the urine, last moment में he will press his belly so that any leftover urine they pass away. Like that left atrium also will contract. And when will it contract? End of the diastole में left atrium undergoes contraction. And because of that contraction of the atrium, this pushing of the blood through the narrow valve, last May, end of the diastole May, it will accentuate. That means lub dub brrr जो है ना, वो क्या हो जाता? Lub dub brrr, last में brrr हो जाता. So that become accentuated. So end diastolic accentuation, otherwise called pre-systolic accentuation of the mid-diastolic murmur because of the atrium's contraction during the last part of the diastole is a feature of only mitral stenosis. So, mitral stenosis, agar mid-diastolic murmur is because of mitral stenosis, it will show pre-systolic accentuation, which is not the feature in aortic regurgitation. अभी समझ में आ गया ना? मजा आ गया ना? बढ़िया. So that is how doctor, आप महाज्ञानी, every time, every day when you are spending time with us, you should become महाज्ञानी. So a lot of times when we study, we often have a confusion. Valvular heart disease, cardiology, Anywhere where logic is involved, you are Dr. Murali Bharadwaj student, you should completely master it. Thank you, Soumya. Awesome. Vandan says, wow. Kush hua Mogambo. Our life, we get an academic orgasm when we make a mass of students understand the concepts which otherwise they struggle to learn. The reason is we also struggle to learn all these things only by discussing with a lot of friends, slowly observing on the patients. We keep learning. Learning is a lifetime process, right? So, it is heard in severe aortic regurgitation, Austin Flint. It is the regurgitant blood from the aortic regurgitation touching the anterior mitral valve leaflet produces the drumbling, and these are the two important factors. And the differential diagnosis, mitral stenosis, is what you need to remember. So, this slide you have to bookmark in the U-Medico app, right? So, Sweetie is asking, sir, can we get this video? Arey, you can get Murali Bharadwaj only. Video mein kya hai? I am all yours of everybody. So, don't worry, knowledge is free. Knowledge is meant to solve the human problems and more efficient doctors. That's the whole idea. So, it is a low-pitched sound, Austin Flint. Low-pitched sounds will have a high amplitude. So, you have to use the bell, not the diaphragm. So, now, Austin Flint versus MS. One of the favorite questions, doctor. So, diastolic thrill is a feature in mitral stenosis. S1 is loud in mitral stenosis. S3 is seen only in Austin Flint. And atrial fibrillation is a feature of mitral stenosis. If the MDM has a AF also, then that's more likely to be due to mitral stenosis is what you have to remember.